living for the moment, now we're one with the world. I can't lose this feeling I get. My heart's in the right place, and so is my soul, yeah. I won't take no excuses for it. I want it, love it, need it, live it. I feel like something's missing when I do not have it. I feel it in my bones, gotta find my space. These emotions on my face, taking a toll, I gotta pay it forward. I'll give it all that I can. No matter what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take no for an answer. If it don't hurt me, it makes me stronger. Yeah, no what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take it no more. Oh, baby. Just leave it to me. I know what I need. You'll find if you see. And if you believe, you live and you breathe, you'll find the key. Lifting me, lifting you. Can't go alone, let's do by two. Doing this together, it's me by you. All through the night, all through the night. This is me, this is you. When we get together, we can all pull through. I don't ever wanna stop this groove. Let's get it right. Take it to the Lord, then take it to the grave. Listen to the wise man, tell me what to say. Listen to your heartbeat like it still bleed. A little bit of hope, yeah, it's what we still need. Say a little prayer for the moment. Give what you got, just go in. Can't hold you back if you own it. Live your life like you're chosen. No matter what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take no for an answer. If it don't hurt me, it makes me stronger. Yeah, no what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take it no more. Oh, baby, just leave it to me. I know what I need. You'll find if you see. And if you believe, you live and you breathe, you'll find the key. Know what I need, I know what I need. You find the keys, the key.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Racing Club International broadcasts. My name is Ryan Gill, and today I am going to be your broadcasting host for the first ever championship here at RCI, and it is going to be the RCI Porsche Cup. I am very glad to be able to cast this championship for you here tonight, but I will not be alone. Joining me in the commentary box, I have Nick Setnick.
Hey, how's everyone doing? I am happy to be here. It's always fun to see a Porsche Cup. It is actually something of a fan favorite from the drivers. It was highly requested that we do a Porsche race. People do like taking the cup cars around. It's always fun to see a manufacturer race as well, because it's just raw skill out on the track that is going to get you to that pole position. Also in the box today we got George. How you doing, George?
Hey, how's it going, Nick? How's it going, Ryan? Yeah, glad to be with you guys here at my home circuit of Kyalami and in my favorite spec series of all the spec series in the Porsche Cup car. Like you talked about, Nick, it's pretty cool to see all the guys in the same car and really going down to the driver's skill limit. So I'm pretty keen to see what these guys do. Of course, we're coming up to the end of the free practice session that we had here, and we'll be running over to Quali and then, of course, the race. So we'll be here with you guys to talk through the race as we see Samir getting a nice kick out of Ingwe, a big drift going down, and that's a bit of a characteristic of these Porsche Cup cars. The back end likes to come out.
Yes, it is, and as we come to the end of free practice, we are slightly delayed in when the stream was supposed to go live, so we do apologise for that, but we had a couple of back-end issues on our side, but they are all sorted out now, and we are into qualifying, so we haven't missed the start of qualifying. And George, how about you you give us a little bit of information about your home circuit here, Kyalami, whilst I get everything up to speed.
Yeah, I mean, no problem, Ryan. It's quite an interesting thing about Kyalami as well. It is actually Porsche owned, so it is a fitting place for the opening round here at the Porsche, for our Porsche Cup at the Racing Club International. So, Kyalami, how to summarize it? It's probably just a bunch of blind corners, really. If you were to just summarize it to someone, there's very little to know what's coming next. You have to have a good feel of the track as we look at Cormac Ryan Meenan coming around through Sunset. Definitely one of the signature corners here. And in these Porsche Cup cars, it's going to be really interesting to see just how they keep the traction there over the duration of the race. Obviously, those tires are going to wear down. And now they make their way down into the S's. Again, just a corner that you're not really going to see overtaking maneuvers going down. It's more about what you can do coming up to Leeuwkorp here. And again, just a blind corner, you break up and suddenly the track disappears and you need to turn hard onto the left. There's two lines through here that you can get work done. So keen to see if the guys exploit those lines. Then they make their way down through to the mine shaft, and of course very high paced corner, high speed. You're just on the throttle the entire time, and you get onto the brakes again to get down through Cheetah. Sorry, that would be Crocodile, and then you would come up to Cheetah with the scary sausage curb. Yeah, as you see the Porsche branding in the background, Porsche sponsored, fitting place. I'm excited. Round one kicks off here.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, it's always fun to hear the dynamics of a track. As people probably wouldn't know, is I'm pretty new to racing and sim racing in general. It's always great to hear those kind of details because that helps me, and I'm sure that is interesting stuff for the viewers at home to hear. Kind of get those little tricks and little things about each track. Each track has this great personality to it, and it's always fun to see that kind of broken down on more of like a scientific level, and kind of see how the drivers on the track are going to be handling them, right?
Yeah, it is. This is a car that is not easy to handle by any means. I previously had commentated on not 2 full seasons, 1.5 seasons of the Porsche Cup, the former community that I used to do casting for. So, yeah, these cars, although I'm not the biggest Porsche fan in the world, these cars are close to my heart, and they forever will be, as much as they are absolute monsters. No traction control on these cars. You do have ABS, but no traction control, and you know, as we mentioned earlier, they do like to have the back end step out a bit, as we see Cormac Ryan Meenan coming out of the Crocodiles and towards Cheetah now to finish his first qualifying lap time. We've been seeing people setting 43s and 44s in practice, and I did see Wolf Matushka actually say that 42 is possible around here, but we shouldn't expect to see too many of those coming today. As Cormac Ryan Meenan comes over the line, he is not going to go up towards the top of the field. Up towards the top is actually Savalainen with a 143.413. That is incredibly fast around here.
That definitely is getting the car and getting the most out of the car as possible. Obviously, these guys are going to try and find a little bit more, but definitely hitting the marks off the line there and securing a pole position with 10 minutes left of quali. Anything can happen. I think the track will rubber in a little bit more as well. The tires will get a little bit more up to temperature, so expect those times to drop just a tiny bit. But for now, Savalainen really did just dominate the first qualifying lap. He set all 3 purple sectors, and for him, that's going to definitely sit with his confidence levels. You know, you always want to go and compare yourself out to what everybody else is doing on the same track under the same tire conditions. And if you can continue to improve your time as you go around, you know, that is going to be good. It looks like Jardier is currently going to be, or he was 10th up on his time. Silverline, while we follow him around, isn't up on his prior delta just yet, according to my split timing screen. But you know, this thing isn't as reliable, and anything can happen in the closing sectors of the lap. But for now, we're going to see him coming around through the Cheetah corner, coming down to Ingwe, which is of course the final corner before the line. And we'll see where he stacks up and if anybody else is going to be rivaling the time for now.
Yeah, absolutely. And a fan favorite around here, the Ryan Meenan brothers are joining us today on the track. Up until just a couple seconds ago, as I was going to add, they were, as usual, completely consistent with each other, within 700ths of each other for their first lap in qualifying. And that just shows how consistent they are and consistent with each other. It's always fun to see them come around. We got some really exciting racing out of them on Saturday. Yeah, so we'll be seeing them. Obviously, we have Savalainen holding on to that pole position currently with the 143.4, with Jardier just a little bit behind, only 0.3 currently in the 39 Porsche. But yeah, there's plenty of other big names here. We have Garland and the Wusts, which was a point of conversation on Saturday as well. Mick was in the box with us, and we kept getting confused about who was where, and it turns out there are two Wust drivers. No relation that we know of, but it is just a funny coincidence that there just happens to be two of them. And led to a little bit of confusion in the box, but in the end it was entertainment, and I hope our fans at home at least saw it that way, Ron.
Yeah, I mean, regarding the Ryan Meenan brothers, you know, they're two brothers that I have had quite a bit of experience in racing against. I raced against I raced against Killian in the ACR AM series towards the start of 2020, and I raced against both of them in the ACR Pro series just a few months ago. And whilst unfortunately I had to pull out of that, I can tell you, you know, firsthand that as I see Jardier drifting through Cheetah, not entirely sure if that's the intended strategy there for Jardier, but he's making it work as he always does. But yeah, both of these brothers incredibly fast. Killian Ryan Meenan is, you know, he's so good at overtaking. He's so persistent, and he'll bide his time if necessary. And the opposite for Cormac. Cormac is one of the best defensive drivers I have ever seen in ACC, and and that's, you know, nothing to take away from his ability to overtake people either. So it's going to be interesting to see how they both stack up against each other. Of course, it's always good to get one up on your sibling or other family member that maybe you compete in with sim racing. And unfortunately, we don't have either of the Strello brothers here tonight, but they are also two sim racing brothers that are very well known within ACC. So hopefully we can get them in at some point. Other names that you were mentioning. Names on there that will be familiar to most people if you've watched ACC broadcasts. Billy Octane is a very common name. It's also an amazing surname, by the way. Just to get that out there, we've talked about it so much, but it is honestly just amazing. And then some of the other drivers that you will probably recognise from the SRO series, we have Samir Ibrahimi and Chris Hooker as well here today. And in fact, it was Chris Hooker that actually competed for a Porsche Cup championship in the last Porsche Cup series, or the first Porsche Cup series that I commentated on as well. So it's nice to see him back in a car that he does very well in indeed, but he's all the way down in 14th at the moment. But the top 8 at the moment, covered by just about 7/10 of a second, but the top 15 covered by 1.4 seconds. Very close here in qualifying.
It is close, and it's a difficult kart to get around here. Talking about names that you guys talked about, I can obviously bring one there as well. Zahir Essa, one of our South African locals, and probably one of our top races here, if not the best in terms of performance. He wins everything here. He's up there sitting in second place at the moment, so glad to see he's here getting out. I popped him an invite over when we joined over onto the RCI side of things, and I'm glad to see that he's jumped into the Porsche Cup car. Ryan, were you involved when we did the big grid at Bathurst?
Unfortunately, I was not, George. This was one of the Porsche Cup races that I unfortunately had to miss. And you know, as much as I have said, this is a series, or this kind of series is what started my ventures into commentating. As we see Ismail Lebrec losing it through the final corner. He was actually up on his time, so he's going to be very, very frustrated with that. He was, I think, about 9/10 up, so frustrations for Lebrec. But no, I wasn't there, unfortunately, for the Porsche Cup Bathurst race, but I did watch it back, and I have to say, you know, we need to get more cup races at Bathurst. It is a phenomenal track, especially with these cars.
Yeah, and I mean, I could be wrong, but I think Zahir won that one, Zahir Essa. So that was where I was trying to reference it back. So got some experience in the cup car side of things, and Nick maybe just took off on his side. I'm not sure. It sounded like a rocket ship launch taking place.
No, you know, so while we love to commentate over sim racing, I apparently live on the main street in my town where people like to rev up their engines in real life. So that's always a little treat I get every once in a while.
That was a car revving.
Yes, that was a something. I'm sure one of my distant neighbors or something. I'm not sure. My window wasn't open at the time. But while we're talking about the Porsches on screen, like both of you said, and like I've said as well, you know, lots of big names. Currently watching Wolf Matuszka come around, actually, in his classic Pepto-Bismol Porsche. He's been carrying that livery around with him for as long as I've been commentating, actually, in the box. So that's always a hugely recognizable name and livery combination. Currently down in 10th place in the 25. But, you know, we still got a little bit more of qualifying. We'll see a few more laps. I did notice that Takamaki has actually grabbed the best time in the first sector, squeaking out just a little bit faster and then Savalainen, who is still holding on to pole in the 77. But yeah, I mean, we are still really close, all the way up until 11th place. We are within 1 second. So we could see some good little changes coming out in the last couple minutes of qualifying.
Yeah, and Wolf Matuszka, I mean, we love to talk liveries here in the commentary box. It's probably our favourite subject. And Fabian Schrodberger, who is unfortunately not a commentator anymore, but he always likes to remind me that I hate pink. That is not true. In fact, I think that some of Wolf Matuszka's liveries are probably some of the best pink liveries I have ever seen on a car. Especially using pink as a primary colour. Usually don't see it as a primary colour, but I do think that Wolf Matuszka's liveries are very nice, as he goes 1/10 faster on his from his previous best, but that's only going to net him 12th at the moment. And with only time for one more lap, Wolf Matuszka's going to have to pull a good one out of the bag here, but Samir Ibrahimi is 2/10 up on his lap at the moment. He currently sits 6th, and if he were to improve by 2/10, that could bump him up to 3rd potentially, so he's got some time to squeeze out here.
I don't think that starting on pole position necessarily is the best thing at Kyalami here, because you start on the right side of the track, so when you come into what is effectively T2 after the kink, so Crowthorne, you would be on the outside line, and you may lose that inside line to you know, that driver that starts on the 2nd position here. So even 2nd and 4th aren't starting on a bad side of the track. The left side of Kyalami is not bad, and with 52 seconds to go, you're going to see Ibrahimi just taking an inside line, getting his move done in quali. Just good to see drivers being aware of where other drivers are around them, and if there's a quicker driver out on track and you're not setting a time, it's always good to get out of the way. It's not something that's always noticed and talked about, but it's something that you know, people appreciate as drivers coming around and doing so. So we're going to see where Samir Ibrahimi comes across the line. He's currently 3/10 up as he comes down into Ingwe and finds another 10th as he gets the exit done cleanly too. So this is a flying lap coming out, and this is going to drop him down the order, or up the order. Second place coming out from the number 49, and that's a great steal away from Zahir Issa, who will drop down to third.
It is
absolutely screaming lap from him. So that was always fun to see. As he gets a little more loose again, I gotta say, as a fan of rally racing, cars that go sideways just get me excited. So I am just gonna really enjoy commentating over this race for maybe just that reason alone, regardless of how exciting the drivers are going to make it for us. So to kind of see that exciting, looser driving than we might be used to in GT3 class racing, where everything's pretty tight, or where you're sliding and obviously losing a ton of time. But I'm sure it'll lead to some very exciting racing for us.
Yeah, I was going to just cut in there, Nick, but fortunately you got to the end of your point in time. Jaroslav Honzik, or Jardier as he's more commonly known, he is 4/10 up currently on his lap time. He's 3/10 off pole, so if he can keep this time coming towards the end of the lap now as he comes towards the final corner, he's going to come through. Is he going to keep it all together nice and smooth? He loses a bit of time on the exit, but I think if he can keep up the pace, he's going to go pole. Is he not? No, he's not. He's going to miss out on 96 thousandths of a second coming over the line. I think Savalainen might have improved his time as well just towards the end. And I think Wolf Matushka, who was on a personal best, has now lost that time, so he'll be coming into the pit lane. And it seems to be Savalainen who will take the first pole position of this Porsche Cup season.
You're not wrong, Ryan. It was exactly that. Savalainen did improve his time, and if he hadn't, it would have been Jardier's pole. So shooting out from the top drivers all the way till the very end as we make our way onto the starting line.
Absolutely, and as we're going to get a kind of a panning shot of the starting grid, in your top three spots, we've got Jonas Savalainen securing that pole position, followed by Honzik and Ibrahimi in second and third. But as George pointed out, and I didn't know this either, that starting on the right side going into T1 might not be the best thing. But as we've seen at RCI, these drivers, especially in the pro split, drive very cleanly. We haven't seen anything too catastrophic yet in races that we've broadcast, going into at least the first lap. So I'm sure we're going to keep it nice and clean and professional, as is becoming the standard around here.
Yeah, it is. It's something that we do strive for, to have some nice clean racing. And it's on the topic of clean racing and potential incidents tonight, it is worth noting that alongside the live commentary that we're going to be providing to you tonight, we also have a team of live stewards in the box just above us. They are going to be dealing with all the incidents that are had throughout the course of the evening. So they'll be looking at every single incident and assessing them as necessary, handing out time penalties or drive-through penalties as they see fit for the incident. And it's always good to know that we've got the live stewards out there to make sure that the racing stays fair over the course of the evening. But this is the first round of the Porsche Cup. It's going to be a very small championship. In fact, 3 rounds. We're going to be here for the first round at Kyalami in South Africa. We head to the States, actually, Nick's home country. We are going to Laguna Seca for the second round, and then we head to the Netherlands for the final round of the championship at Zandvoort. And after having said that, Zandvoort's going to be a bit special for me because it's the first race I ever casted was at Zandvoort, so I kind of have a soft spot for Zandvoort as well. It's a stream for reminiscing on past memories for me at the moment. But yeah, so what do you two? Well, I'll go to Nick first. Nick, what do you think of this obviously short calendar that we have, but the selection of tracks are quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, those are 3 tracks that I like. Obviously, my not my hometown, but my home state track, Laguna Seca, is a very fun track. I've been there many times in real life to watch races. Just a really excellent course, produces great racing, and it's a kind of a smaller track compared to the likes of like Spa, but I think the corkscrew and the hill coming down, a lot of people like to talk about the turn right before the corkscrew as well. Just makes for really exciting racing. The overtakes are always really tight, so that's going to be really fun to see. But while we're here at Kyalami in South Africa, this is also a really fun track to watch. I personally love the stint between Barbecue and Clubhouse. I think that's just a fun bit of the track to watch. The cars are just going fast, and we're gonna see those possibly dangerous overtakes, or maybe those aggressive maneuvers to try to get some positions, and I think we're in for some really exciting racing. But other than that, the top 3 cars were setting qualifying lap times all within a tenth of each other, which just goes to show how consistent this race is going to be. I think we're going to see maybe not a car sneak out to first place, which is something that happens for sure, as we're about 40 seconds away from going into our formation lap. Sometimes you see just one particular alien driver just gets a really good start, and he just pulls away from the pack, and they're kind of just left in the leaves everyone else in the dust. But I think with the names that we're seeing, with it being a manufacturer race, I think we're going to see a really, really tight race all the way all the way to the end.
Are we gonna pick race predictions here, Ryan?
George, you know me so well, don't you? Yes, we do always love to, or I at least always love to propose race predictions to people. Not everyone likes to do it on their broadcast, but I always like to throw a bit of a curveball to the commentators that I have alongside me. So George, you were so eager to bring it up, of course. Who are you going to be putting your money on tonight for the race?
I think it would be a little bit of an easy choice for me. Zahir Issa, my local man, our star in terms of South African sim racing. Keen to see how he stacks up here at our home circuit. So I'm going to be a little bit biased, use a little bit of my home turf, and go with someone that I'm very much familiar with. I'm not saying I'm not familiar with other people, but I'm just glad to see him up here with such talented names as well. So yeah, Zahir Issa in that number 71, starting in 5th place for me.
All right, and with George's confidence in his fellow South African driver, Nick, who's your money on tonight? I know you know some of the names around here. Quite familiar now with some of the races that you've casted. Who's your money on tonight?
Well, after watching qualifying, I think we saw a really solid lap come out of Matushka at the near the end of qualifying to come into 2nd place, only to be replaced pretty quickly by Jardier and Ibrahimi. But like I said, I think the top of the pack is really tight. We saw them finishing within tenths of each other the whole qualifying session. All the way up to the end where they were getting their faster laps in, and I just like the color pink along with blue, so I think Matushka is going to be my pick for the commentator's box, for me at least.
Alright, so we've got Zahir Issa is George's pick. That's the number 71 Porsche that you can see on your screen right now, the lovely yellow and dark green mixture there. That's a very interesting colour palette that you don't usually see, but I think it's been executed fairly well. And then of course Nick has gone for Wolf Matushka in the lovely pink and white number 25 Porsche. As for myself, who am I going to go for tonight? Well, I'd be lying if I said I don't already know who is very good in a Porsche around here. And I've got a lot of confidence in him. I don't usually pick him for races because, for a while he he did kind of disappear from some of the series that I was casting on, but my money tonight is going to be on the number 49 of Samir Ibrahimi, the lovely gold and dark green Porsche that you can see there starting in 3rd place. So those are the cars that we have our eyes on tonight. Feel free to leave your predictions though in the chat, and we'll get around to them later in the race if we have the time, and it very much is a case of if we have the time, because these races are usually crazy.
They're
Yeah, absolutely. And oh yeah,
sorry, Nick. I was going to just say that we were going through Ingwe lining up side by side. The final time that these cars are all going to be this close together at this slow of a speed. Waiting for the green lights to go. Silverleinen and Honzik will lead us away on the front line. We see Matushka poking a nose out from the outside, trying to get onto that inside line down into T1. It's a great start for Silverleinen, though, getting himself up to the front of the order. But there are Porsches across the line. It looks like Zahir Essa has been shot across the track there. It doesn't look like too much contact with other people. But Silverleinen, what a great start coming out from the number 77. Leads off. Samir Ibrahimi has jumped up. He's got himself just into, he's just holding off second from Matushka in 3rd there, who, of course, it's going to be Jardia, who looks like he's dropped down the order just a little bit. He's dropped down to 4th place there.
Yeah, problems for Zahir Essa on the start. We're not entirely sure what happened of that. If there was an incident, it will be investigated by the stewards, and we'll potentially find out what happened later on in the race, as Wolf Matushka goes a bit wide and has to regain the balance in the car at the moment. But it's been a good start from the likes of Sabria Imahimi and Wolf Matushka to gain a place on Jardia on the start. Chris Hooker, who I think qualified down in 7th, is up to 5th as well. So he's benefited from Zahir Essa's accident towards the start, and he's also gained a place on the likes of Takamaki.
Absolutely, and as we see the top 5 or 10 of the cars coming around the track, there were a few incidents early on. I was able to grab a little bit of the replay on my end for Essa. Looks like he might have had a little bit of contact, kind of thrown into the wall, but he is still in the race. So we'll hopefully see him climb back up the ranks as we're coming around to lap 2 now. Silverleinen holding on to 1st place currently, but not gaining too much ground as we keep look on Ibrahimi, who is only 7 tenths back as we go into T1, followed by a very close Machuska and Honzik. And I think we are going to keep seeing this type racing coming around for lap 2.
Yeah, and just to clear something up as well, it was Giannis Saknes who I believe got a drive-through on the start for being out of position when the lights went green. So he received a drive-through penalty from the automatic stewarding system that the game, or the server rather, has in place. So he got given a drive-through penalty. He has now served that penalty. And Zahir Essa and Jan Matthias are both in the pit lane at the moment, so I think maybe damage required to be repaired on those 2 cars, but we will keep you up to date on what's happening with them as Samir Ibrahimi follows Silverleinen through Ingwe and now down towards Mineshaft.
I don't think that Essa is getting out of that pit box, unfortunately, Ryan. I think that that car's been stationary for a long time. We might have to throw that out of the order. My commentator's curse prediction has been taken over from Jesse Lee and has been applied here to my fellow countrymen. So unfortunately it does look like that has happened, but as we look at Matthias Kopf driving through, he has made up a couple of positions. I think he started in 14th place, so I think he's made up 2 positions here. He's currently got Dimitrov all over the back end, that number 44 Porsche Cup car, the red and white black dabbed Porsche Cup, is trying to use that slip. I love that the lights on these cars as well. If Nick was a rally fan and he likes the drifting, the rally style headlights on these Cup cars are also quite appealing then.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always fun to see that as they come around the track. worth noting, Lebrec down at started at 23rd position is also up to 18th now. I know we did lose a couple of cars off of the stack there, but that's another name that we have seen before, and maybe we'll get some action from the back of the pack as Lebrec will climb to somewhere in the mid pack as we get into a little further into the race. We are now about a little short of 5 minutes into this race of 60 minutes total, and we will continue on that as the pack seems to be spreading out just a little bit, but we're still seeing plenty of 2, 3, or even 4 stacked battles coming around as we're only a few laps deep here. As the Dimitrov actually getting a little sideways there, not losing much time, but the fishtail nature of these cars is going to be apparent the whole time this race is going on. Actually, the inside is going to get taken over and lose that position from Ryan Meenan, which was a huge move. And another contact on the right side, bashing around. This is going to be just Rubbins Racing as they are coming around the back third of this course.
What a nuts move to be! What a nuts move to be pulled there by Mikowski. He saw some possible opportunities there as Dimitrov and I believe it was Kopf went through the. Was it Crocodile? They went deep, and he came up. Then he decided to just send it on the inside, up through Cheetah, and made that stick. And Kopf now fighting again for that inside line against Dimitrov. I think he's going to hold it. He's going through the Yuxke sweep right now. Side by side, they go into Barbecue. Going to have the inside line. The cutback potentially there, though. Again, they're going to go side by side, lining themselves up for Sunset. Now, Dimitrov on the outside. Going to have Kopf on the inside line there, still sticking it out and holding it. This is beautiful driving coming out from both drivers. Coming down to Sunset or Clubhouse, they're still going to try and hold it. Dimitrov going to slot ahead temporarily, sliding out in the background. We're going to see Vust also trying to get in on this action. Cars fighting all across the track at the moment through the S's. This is where everybody just has to settle it out. It's one car across, and just look at those Porsches roaring up towards Leeuwkop now. Dimitrov seems to have held off Kopf. I don't know how, but we said Porsche going way deep at the top of Leeuwkop has missed his braking points and gets sent into the dirt.
I think, speaking of that Porsche going off in the background, I think that was Ismail Lebrec, the driver that Nick had just mentioned a moment ago, was making up some good places from the start. I think that was his car going off the road, as we do see contact behind, and that was Alexander Dorokot was caught in an incident there with Dustin Vust. Going to see if we can get a replay of that as they come out of the hairpin down towards Mineshaft. And it was on the exit of the Crocodiles here that they had their incident. Just going to see if we can catch what exactly happened here. So it seems like Dorokot, unfortunately Dustin Vust just losing control of the car. Dorokot had nowhere to go, and he's just an unfortunate victim of the nature of these cars.
Yeah, absolutely, and that might be something that is going to be a repeat offense as we jump back to Ibrahimi, who also got just a hair loose, and I think that's just going to keep happening and might lead to other accidents, and we would hope not, but it is inevitable with the looseness of these cars, as it has proven to be a very exciting race so far, with maybe a couple takeouts, but we do have a live stewarding team with us, so they will be visiting these incidents and dishing out penalties if they are needed. I will point out that there was a drive-through awarded to
Takamaki, wasn't it?
Yeah, Takamaki grabbed a drive-through. I missed the reason for it, but that will drop them down to 18th, just showing how tight this race has been. A drive-through can be pretty brutal to your positioning, since we're only about 10 minutes in. Yes, we will hope for a clean race, and those penalties will have a hefty price attached to them.
Yeah, they will, and as we actually see coming into the last corner here, we see Martin Lorenk and Ryan Meenan going side by side. I think Killian has managed to get in front of Lorenk? Yes, he has, and now they come down through the kink and towards turn 2, and now I think Lorenk is under attack from Antilla behind in the number 16 Porsche. Antilla not quite able to go side by side through turn 2. But Kylian has made up another place. He now finds himself in P8, but it's not over yet because Lorenk has said, well, as much as you took that place away from me, I'm going to try and take it back. He's going to try and go on the outside line through this long right-hander, but he's not going to have the pace to do it. And tucks back in behind Kylian Ryan-Minen.
I mean, it's a nice little pack of cars, and just talking about, I said Essa was out. I mean, Essa's back on track there. You can see him. He's lapping around in, I believe, 25th place at the moment. So he's a lap down on everybody else, trying to make his way back through. So picking up, trying to get some positions back, but caught up at the moment. Can't really do too much. Going to be caught up in the battle between Lawrence and Ryan-Minen, and of course Antilla has also managed to get into the action here. Any action that happens on track is definitely going to benefit cars behind, and Kyalami not a place that you can really get too much done, as we see is that Jardia and Ibrahimi going side by side now, coming through into Cheetah onto the grass. Jardia has to hold on to it. He does somehow, but this may put him at risk of Chris Hooker up behind, but he's somehow holding. He's lost it. Big slide coming out from Jardia and into the pit wall. That was going to happen if you put it in the wrong place and you got on the power too early, and unfortunately there for Jardia, that's exactly what's happened there. Hopefully not too much damage done, but it did look like a big hit, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're saying, this is a tight pack. That one spin is going to cost Jardier a few positions there, dropping down to 9th place. Now, as we see number 16 go around again, that is...
I don't know if that was a contact, perhaps, with the 39 car.
It's possible. You know, we kind of went wide there, but I mean, it was a solid recovery.
Weird angle to really look at it, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, true. Well, I'm sure our stewards will hit that pretty soon here to see if that was a turnaround or a pit maneuver from the back. But yeah, this has proven to be a just downright aggressive race as we're following Antilla, who's managed to get a little bit of space, which is probably what you're looking for in a race like this, where there is Robins racing going on. Jumping back to Wolf Matushka, who is coming around here, holding on to second place, who... Savalainen holding on to first position, and what a safety net that has secured him, because the action that we've seen probably in his rearview mirror, he's saying, you know, I don't want to be a part of any of that. I'm just going to keep my line clean, and as long as I can keep a few seconds at least behind me before we get into lapping the back of the pack, I think that's going to be what keeps him up at the front.
Yeah, for sure.
Stephen...
And sorry, George, just to cut in there, it was important to note that Wolf Matushka had got past Samir Ibrahimi before Jardia was actually trying to make an overtake on Samir. So at some point, Wolf Matushka did get past Samir. Not sure if Samir made a mistake or if Wolf Matushka legitimately made an overtake. Unfortunately, we did not catch that, but one thing for sure is that Jardia is on the back foot now. He is down in 8th place, and he's going to have a lot of work to do to get back up to a podium position.
Lebrec and Garland in the background of the car that we're looking at here are literally fighting tooth and nail for that position down into T2. Steven Wurst is going to be under attack by either Lebrec or Garland, depending on who benefits first, or maybe both of them are going to get the move done on Wurst. So coming down into sunset, it will be Wurst to secure and hold off the brightly colored Lebrec, chasing down in that number 67, and of course Garland in the predominantly black with red accented Porsche behind. It's you know, it's these kind of trains that make for interesting racing, and it's all about holding your position, trying to make pace and catch the car in front, but at the same time, you know, you don't want to let the cars behind you get any sort of sniff of the inside line here. So you want to defend, you want to hold that inside line where you can, but you know, it's also not going to be the fastest way around. You do need those sweeping apexes, and if guys are going to be better on the brakes, the opportunities are going to just open themselves up. So setting themselves up here is important in these Cup car races to be able to benefit off anything that happens up the order. We saw earlier Jardia making that mistake that allowed many cars to slip on by, and that's exactly what people are doing here today. So Lebrec and Garland still in the background fighting it out, and Lebrec is really doing good defensive driving because Garland closes the gap down, and Ingwe getting loose. We've seen cars lose it there before, doing well to control it, and it's not what you want to do in the Porsche Cup cars. Still, you're going to kill your tires, Ryan.
Yeah, for sure, and Ismail Lebrec having to hold off Garland right now. The 101 Porsche, the black and red Porsche, putting pressure on the very multicoloured 67 Porsche Cup car, and Lebrec manages to defend into the second, third and fourth corner, but significant damage onto Lebrec's car. We did see him go off at Leeuwkop earlier on in the race, so that's obviously where he's picked up that damage. Looking throughout the field, Cormac Ryan in 17th place. He's quite far down, actually 18th now, as I've just seen Ossi Takamaki has just got past him, so that's going to be one to keep an eye on. Another one to keep an eye on is Cormac's brother, Kylian Ryan, only half a second behind Ondrej Dedicek at the moment, so battles all over the place.
Ryan, the interesting thing here is that we've still got 44 minutes left of racing, and you would expect this to be sort of the tightness of the field coming into the last 10 minutes, you know, putting pressure on each other, trying to extend those driver limits. It's also another tactic here at Kyalami, you know, is forcing those guys to run wide, pick up the penalties, and get a drive through towards the end. Not a lot of overtaking opportunities present themselves, and what I quite like to notice here is just how to the edge of the limit these Cup cars are being pushed. I mean, you see them kicking it off onto some of the dirts and things out of the fast right-handers and left-handers. It's something else doing that in these Porsche Cup cars without that traction control there to add a little bit of a buffer before the back end comes out. So these guys are driving on the limit, they're slaying their tires, and there's no mandatory stop. So, you know, you're driving these things flat out until the end of the race.
Absolutely, and the driving strategy is actually what I would be kind of looking toward right now, where if you're in one of these trains, if you're in the back of one of these trains, I should say, are you just waiting for whoever's in front of you to make that mistake, since it might be inevitable? If we're pushing these cars out to the edges of the track, waiting for them to catch just a extra blade of grass, which is enough to throw these cars around, as we're following Wust with a very close Lebrec behind him in that bright livery. These battles are going to stay tight, and I think more so than you would expect from a pro split race is there might be a little bit of waiting for those slight mistakes, something to lose the back end a little bit, lose that critical speed through these very fast turns, and you'll start to see those kind of boil down a little bit.
Yeah, as we're just on the rear wing of Ismail Lebrec at the moment. He's got Garland right behind him, and as they come in towards the Crocodiles now, Garland having a look, but not quite having the pace or the room to get past at the moment as they come now towards Cheetah. Got to be very, very careful not to hit the anti-cut curb going through Cheetah, or you will find yourself in the gravel and, most importantly, in the wall, unless you're incredibly lucky and you manage to steer it away. Just to keep you up to date on some other things going on and around the circuit, I have just noticed that Kylian Ryan has got past Ondrej Dedicek, so Kylian puts himself up into 6th place at the moment. And I have also noticed that Eero Antilla has received a 15-second post-race penalty. George, would you happen to know anything about that?
I'm not sure, but I believe that was the pop-up for me was causing an accident. So that might have been one of those contacts that we might have seen or even not seen until it might have thrown someone around at some point, and the stewards dishing out that 15-second penalty must have been something a little more serious. Our stewarding team has been working out how to deal with penalties and are working on that system. A 15-second penalty would be something that would cost somebody at least a few positions, or if not even 1 or 2 contacts. So that might have been something pretty serious in the back, receiving a 15-second penalty for that.
Yeah, and actually, as you were just commenting on that, Nick, I have actually seen the live penalty report come through on the Discord from the stewards themselves. So we have a couple of incidents to go over. So let's have a look at the cars in question. Ossie Takamaki did receive a drive-through penalty. Nick mentioned that earlier on in the race. That demoted him down to 18th. Well, I can tell you that that was for lap 1 incident before T1, so I can only assume that was the incident with Sahir Essa on the first lap before T1. So unfortunately, Sahir Essa, who was George's pick for tonight, did have a bit of difficulty going towards the first couple of corners, and I think Ossie Takamaki may have been the guilty party in that, and he served his penalty straight away, so... to be honest, maybe he himself has probably assumed that he was the guilty party in that one. But yes, Antilla, who has received a 15-second post-race penalty, has a 15-second time penalty for dive bombing into turn 1 and causing other cars to lose positions. So that is the reason for the 15-second penalty, which will be added post-race. So not necessarily collisions, but dive bombing to the extent of forcing someone off, or multiple cars off the track. So nice to see the stewards on top of that, and I don't really think Antilla will have much to say about that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's something that we might keep seeing, coming from the looser racing that we've seen in this pro split today for the first 20 minutes. It could be something as simple just grabbing a little bit too much edge and turning it around, and that might lead to some contact. If you don't have the grip to control the car, obviously that's going to lead to a little bit of contact, especially when we're seeing packed trains like this. I mean, look at this pack here. They're just rubbing bumpers as they're trying to get around each other through these tight corners and holding onto those speeds. And as Kop's actually going to lose a little bit of position from Lebrec, who's going to go on the left side. But yeah, just we're going to keep seeing these throughout this race. These trains, these tight side by sides going into turn 1. Lebrec's going to take the inside corner and try to secure more of this position, and is going to do it, it would seem. Even though it was a little wobbly from the back, it's always interesting to see that from the comms box, the car going a little wobbly from inside the car. That has got to be terrifying, as we're grabbing some dirt also as well from everybody, throwing up some clouds for us. This is really exciting racing to watch, honestly.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, George, I hadn't realised you were back. I was just going to say that Lebrec looked to have the move done into turn 2, but fair play to Kopf, he managed to hold on. And now Garland's decided that he wants to get past Lebrec. These two have been fighting tooth and nail for the whole race, it seems, George.
They really have, and I think that the run of the dirt from Kopf and Lebrec really gave Garland the run coming into Sunset, and you just saw how close he got. He seems to have backed off through the S's for whatever reason, and it might be this. It might be Takamaki putting on the pressure. So now Garland, who was given the opportunity to maybe make a move on Lebrec, now has to defend for his position as Ossie Takamaki, the number 43, makes his way down here into Crocodile, and Lebrec has run wide. You see Garland has got the run. That's going to allow him to get through way before Crocodile is needed. Takamaki doing the smart move and tucking in, but kicking up. So I don't even know how he survived that. I mean, he took most of that sausage curb with him, did Lebrec, and somehow managed to still hold it, still keep the pace. And Takamaki now doesn't even have the slip, really. It's going to be Lebrec and Garland going down into the kink. They made it through there. Now to Crowthorne, side by side. The outside line is what Lebrec is wanting to do, trying to get late on the brakes, but inside is being defended by Garland, forcing Lebrec to just stay honest and taking a lot more curb. Takamaki now is just getting on the inside. Contact has been made, both cars being sent sideways. Takamaki does well to kind of hold it. It looks like Lebrec also doing the same. We're going to get an instant replay here, and we see the touch coming in. A little bit aggressive maybe from Takamaki to try and get it done into barbecue there, but does yield, leaves Lebrec to take the position back, and will resume the chase.
Absolutely, and it's fun to see that level of professionalism as well. Just an obvious cut into the side of Lebrec there. Both recovered pretty solidly. There was one position that snuck past there, but all in all, very professional and clean, honestly, for a contact, especially in these loose cars where that could have been catastrophic if you do not have the skill or know-how to catch the car when there is contact or a opposing force pushed onto you, as we're going to fall along with Killian here. Yep.
Yeah, Killian is being pressured by Jardier from behind here. We saw Jardier have that big spin, sent him down the order. He's made his way back up to 7th, now to fight for 6th place. Again, the slipstream so important down this long straightaway section of Kyalami. And Killian going to be sort of spoiled for choice on the line that he wants to take for now. Not like we saw earlier where you're being pressured into your line. And I don't expect that Jardier is going to allow Killian to really have that freedom for very long. So Jardier going to reel him in where he can. And this is just where look how much speed he carries through into barbecue. Jardier right on the back spoiler of Killian as they come down into sunset. Still going to stay, not look for the inside, but going to have to back off, does Jardier. That's cost him a little bit of speed, but still he's got the slipstream as they come down into Clubhouse. Again, this is a complex of corners, hard to get work done, but Jardier making it look effortless up the inside. Beautiful bit of driving coming out from Jardier.
I was just about to say, he makes it look so easy, doesn't he? That is not an easy move to make, especially through that tight left-hander, and Jardier just makes it look effortless. And especially against someone, like Killian Ryan Meenan, it's not easy to do moves like that. Just for reference, I mean, Killian Ryan Meenan races actively in the ACR Pro League. He's beaten the likes of Mike Noble, Andre Franke, and even Jardier on a couple of occasions in the Pro League. So, this is a guy that actively does compete towards the front of the field in the Pro Series that he does run in, so he's familiar with people like Jardier, and that is no easy move to pull on someone who is very familiar against this type of opponent. But Jardier, like everything, he just makes it look so easy, but do not underestimate the skill behind that move.
Absolutely, and but also worth noting is that Killian is just staying on the back of Jardier here. He did gain the position, but he's going to keep going for it as he's going to take the inside corner into turn 1. Not quite enough to grab it, but he's going to keep up the pressure, and that just shows the level of skill that these drivers are going to have coming into these turns. Killian is not going to let up, is not intimidated by the likes of Jardier, and he's going to keep this battle going as long as he can until he takes position back and stays competitive, as we've grown to appreciate and expect from the likes of the Ryan brothers.
Absolutely not done with that just yet, as we go back to Dimitrov, who's on the back of Lawrence here. The same complex of corners that we saw a move getting done by Jardier. Unfortunately, not the same opening available for Dimitrov. He's just going to settle back before the S's. This is, of course, the battle for that coveted 10th place, and that's what Lawrence currently holds down. Dimitrov wants to get there, and coming up to Leocorp is not quite in the available space to... He's going to get nicely onto the braking coming through Leocorp, but not quite enough to get himself into the shooting space that one would require as they make their way down towards the Crocodiles. So it's, I mean, Kyalami, it's that track. I talk about it. It's all about margin of error of other drivers, really. And if you can just keep your cool, calm and collected head, you know, you're going to have a great race here. But it's so difficult to do stacked up against such a lobby with drivers that are really pushing themselves to the limit. Ingwe, again, just a corner where your braking points mean everything. And if you can just squeeze a little bit more out of those brakes, brake a little bit later, it just makes closing down so much easier. But again, we'll touch on that nature of the Porsche, the oversteery back end. If you can't get the power down, it doesn't matter. So it's almost like that balance between smooth as fast and keeping it on that knife's edge the entire time. When you are getting into those oversteery sort of situations or running wide onto the dirt, you're losing time all the time. And it really goes to show when two drivers go lap after lap behind one another and they close the gap down and it expands again, you can kind of just see exactly where you know, certain drivers are making those mistakes, and the other driver then capitalizes on it and sees, can I get a move done here?
Yeah, interesting to see what Dimitrov's going to be able to do here. Just notice that behind him is Zahir Esser. He's currently in 23rd place at the moment. He's going to be looking to unlap himself from the likes of Dimitrov, just following closely behind them. Of course, the one thing that Esser doesn't want to do is accidentally take one of these two guys out, so he's being very, very cautious as Dimitrov is starting to see some openings here on the back of Larenk, and I don't think it'll be too much longer before we see Dimitrov go for a lunge on the 171 Porsche in front of him.
Absolutely, and it's always interesting to see the strategies that drivers are going to use. You know, Essa took that brutal, you know, incident in turn one of the first lap, but he's still going to keep on this because this is a mini championship. There are 3 races in this series, and they are, as we hit the halfway point for this, for Kyalami, only 30 minutes left. These sprint races do make it so those big incidents, those possible mistakes or something that costs you a lot of time like that is brutal, and you don't have the time to just play the field and kind of claw your way back up the timetable. But S is going to stay in the race because, you know, it's better to finish than not, and was able to, you know, fix up some of that early damage and stay in this thing. You know, he's going to continue putting pressure on the drivers. You know, that's something that's going to be huge for these Porsche Cup cars, is the pressure from behind, where you don't have that reliable stability in the back, where if you catch a little bit of curb or take something a little too far past that knife's edge, you know, you're going to lose time and lose speed, and overtakes are possible every time that you make even the slightest error.
Yeah, and something I've just noticed is that Kilian Raiminen and Cormac Raiminen have both been in the pit lane. Kilian now down to 18th, Cormac down to 21st. So there's been some reason that both Kilian and Cormac have both come into the pit lane at around the same time, on the same lap, of course. So it's going to be interesting to see what materializes from that, as we continue to watch Dimitrov on the back of Larenk right now. Still hasn't found a way past the Porsche in front, as we see Larenk going a bit wide, but now the opportunity opens itself up through Ingwe. Oh, contact through the final corner, and Larenk flashing his lights. He's not happy with that. Essen's going to take the opportunity to unlap himself from both of them, and Dimitrov does find a way past, but Larenk is not too happy about how he got through.
Yeah, I mean, it was good work to get side by side. I mean, we couldn't really gauge the braking points and that, but the exit looking a little bit scrappy, but rubbing is racing as well, you know, kind of squeezing each other. I'm not quite sure. I mean, you're on the edge of grip and trying to get the most out of the traction, and, you know, positions are on the table. We've got live stewards to have a look into things like that and see, you know, was it fair, was it unfair? So, you know, we'll see, and we'll learn as we go. You know, was it something that our stewards deemed to be a fair move being done, and was it just a little bit of rubbing his racing? Or, sorry, shouldn't say and when giving a situation where there could be two outcomes to it. So looking back at Garland, who unfortunately is no longer in his battle with who was he battling with before? Was it Lebrec? It was
Lebrec, yes. Lebrec had a little bit of contact with Takamaki, I think it was. Takamaki has gone into the pit lane, as has Lebrec, so both of those have come in for a pit stop. Of course, tyres around here are going to be a concern. Kyalami, it's in South Africa, and George can tell you, just as much as anyone, it is hot around here. And
you know how hot it is today, Ryan, on this track particularly. it's 40 degrees on track temperature. So
well, there you go. 40 degrees track temperature at the moment, and these cars chew through tyres. They really, really do. It's what, not having traction control doesn't help either. So, yeah, these cars really do chew through tyres. So it's going to be interesting to see how many more people come in for a pit stop. As we see on the sideboard, Mattis Kopp has also come in for a pit stop. So I think we're going to see quite a few people coming in here to maybe not just refuel, but also take tyres as well, I think is going to be the strategy for a lot of people.
Absolutely, and I did want to just confirm, we were mentioning Lebrec and Takamaki, who have both entered the pits, and I believe they have actually dropped out of the race, if I'm not mistaken. Not able to get their information up anymore, so that might be what we're looking at.
I think you're right, Nick.
Yeah, so that's a bit unfortunate. We saw Lebrec climbing up the tower there up to 17th, up from 24th at the beginning, and there might have been a pretty serious incident there to take both of them out of the race. So I'm sure we'll get more information about that later from our stewards who'll be looking at that. But just goes to show this is a scrappy race. These are scrappy cars. Those are things that might happen, and they are a little unfortunate, but the racing is exciting, and we're doing what we can out here. As we're continuing to follow Garland around, holding on to 13th place, coming into the last corner here, a little bit more space is getting found around the course as cars continue to spread out. Worth mentioning, as we've been watching these tight battles, Savalainen holding on to first place, but Matushka is only 4 seconds behind, obviously with only 24 minutes left in the race. That is becoming a more and more daunting gap to maintain, but it is not a runaway race by any means. So we will continue to see the pressure that we're seeing at the front of the pack to see how that podium is going to change around by the end of it.
Yeah, it is, and something interesting as well is that, we don't have any mandatory pit stop requirements for this race. I think we were initially supposed to have them, but like I did mention towards the start of the stream today, we did have a couple of back-end issues that we've had to sort out. Hopefully they'll be all fixed for the next event, or they should be all fixed for the next event, as I've seen Dimitrov has been given a 5-second time penalty. I get the feeling we'll find out why he's been given that fairly soon. But commenting on Lebrec, we know he had that incident towards the start of the race at Leeuwkop where he went off at the top of the hill and into the barrier. Of course, we don't know if he went off on his own or whether there was contact, so significant damage given to that car could be a reason for retirement. But this falls into Zahir Esser's hands, doesn't it, George? Because, he's essentially got himself back into the race after an initial, incident that happened on the first lap. And, just by continuing and competing, he's gained himself 2 free places.
It's not something that he would have been chuffed with in terms of where he would be lapping around at the moment for sure. But, it's all about, staying, like Nick said, to secure championship points. And if you can benefit because other drivers drop out or have issues, then you're always going to, stick it out. And it's always good to stay and see what sort of happens during a race, and I think that's exactly what's happened here. I mean, is still, I believe, a lap down on the leaders. That initial pit stop to repair damage, I mean, I thought that he had disconnected or thrown in the towel. He was stationary for so long. Cars were relapping him around on the pit straight. So, like you said, it's all about staying. It's all a win for you.
Yeah, absolutely. As somebody who is solidly a AM level driver or even lower, it's always interesting to kind of see people's strategies as far as continuing on with the race, even if something goes wrong early on. To get what position that you can get. If I'm starting at the bottom of the pack, or if I'm even at the mid or top of the pack, and something goes horribly wrong, and I lose everything, at least finishing the race is going to be better than just dropping out completely. So that's going to be something that we might continue to see with these, more aggressive cars, where mistakes are more likely to happen versus our possibly more steady, usual GT3 level cars. So that's, I think, something that we'll continue to see for this mini championship.
Yeah, and a good point I kind of want to touch on a bit, Nick, is, a lot goes into setting up these events. Anyone who's had to work with server files and setting up servers and anything knows that, into organising events like these in championships, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort on the back end from the admins and the staff involved, and, it's never nice to see people quit a race. I mean, yes, things can go wrong, your car can be damaged beyond repair, and, stuff like that is unavoidable. But the likes of Sahir Essa, who, really early on had an accident, had to go into the pit lane, had to get repairs, could have easily thrown in the towel, like George said, but he didn't. He's practiced for this race, he's realised, the effort that's gone into preparing, this championship and stuff, and he wants to keep going and finish the race. And it's something we take note of, especially for things like our endurance races and future championships as well. The people that we're going to want, competing in the top splits and all the splits really, are going to be the people that are committed to finishing the race, even when things go wrong. So, Tahir Esso, he's getting some brownie points today by committing to finishing the end of the race. Just to give you guys a quick recap of what's going on down the top 10 so far. It is Jonas Savalainen who leads the way currently, from Wolf Matushka in second place, Sabir Ibrahimi in third, with Chris Hooker in fourth. Chris Hooker's had a fairly quiet race, to be honest. Not much going in the way of battles for him. Same for Andre Felix. We haven't really seen much of him today. Jardier has been in the wall literally, after the final corner, and he's made his way back up to 6th place, doing well at the moment, and he is actually catching Andre Felix. Only about 2 seconds between those two. Krzysztof Makowski, I can't quite pronounce those kind of names, I'm terrible at them, I apologise, is in 7th place, and he's actually got Antilla not far behind him, only 2.5 tenths, but Antilla carrying a 15-second post-race penalty means that Makowski is probably safe holding down that 7th position. Martin Lorink in 9th, and then of course Ondrej Dedicek rounds out the top 10 for now with 18.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, and
great. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, sorry. It's been interesting to see, the names that we were talking about at the beginning of the race in the qualifying session, and how things have shifted around. This kind of goes to show how tight this particular pack of racers are. Those penalties, those incidents are going to cost you quite a few positions, but we're going to continue to see, as the race kind of calms down quite a bit going into the last leg of it here, the top 10 looking more and more solid, unless something else goes horribly wrong. We'll continue to see that kind of shake out. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone that is in the top 10 is because they have been consistent and they've been fighting for positions, and they know when to maybe let off a little bit and just kind of cruise as much as you can in these types of cars. I mean, we've seen Savalainen take first position, has been holding on to it just fine. Matushka putting on pressure, but you know, as we get closer and closer to zero, the time difference is just going to be tough to make up, even for someone as skilled as Matushka, and just that consistency, that clean line, and that is what is going to win from the fierce battles that we've seen in the back of the pack for sure.
Beautiful bit of drifting going down on screen there that Ryan caught from Louis Alexandre, and Billy Octane capitalizing at the top of Leeuwkorp Hill, coming down towards Mineshaft. So, you know, this is where it kind of comes down to, right? It's the last 16 minutes. It took a long time for these guys to settle into their train positions that we normally see taking place quite early on, you know, and then they battle it out towards the end. But it took a long time for the guys to sort of settle into these positions. I don't think it's quite over just yet. I think the last 10 minutes in any hour-long race in any car are quite difficult on a single set of tires, and we're kind of coming up to that period. And I think the Cup cars are not free from those sort of physics features, and it could get quite interesting coming down into the closing sector. I'm excited. Can you hear the excitement, Ryan?
Oh, you're always excited, George. Even when you don't sound excited, you're excited. And I guess that's just the South African passion coming out from you at the moment. But as we come towards the last 15 minutes of the race, I've noticed Samir Brahimi is only 1.4 seconds behind Wolf Matushka, so he's going to be closing in on Wolf for second place fairly soon, I think. And Felix at the moment is just got 1.9 second gap between him and Jardier. Now Jardier is going to have to get a move on realistically if he's going to close down that gap and get past Felix. So Felix is going to be very tempted to defend this as well. He's held this 5th place for a long time, and he's not going to be keen to give it away coming into the closing 15 minutes now.
Absolutely, and I think what is going to be most interesting as we get into the last few minutes here, what battles are being chosen. You know, what tactics are you using to hold on to your positions? I mean, as mentioned, Matushka might be in a little bit of a fight for second place coming into the last few laps if Ibrahimi can keep up that pace. Is actually able to close in a little bit more, judging from my tool here. But yeah, so we might be still seeing a podium change this late in the race, which is always exciting to see. Nothing gets me going more in a race like this, especially like a 1 hour sprint race like this, is those last couple of minutes, that last lap, still battling out for a position, and just nothing is settled until you are past that finish line, and that is what makes for very exciting racing all the way up until the end.
100%, Nick. Like this Felix and Jardier battle as well is it's gonna heat up. I mean, if you look at the lap times on the lap before the last lap, Felix was 3/10 slower than Jardier. On the last lap, Felix was a 10th slower than Jardier, and all of the times that you're saying slower than Jardier is a problem when you've got 13 minutes of racing, and the gap is not really big. So if you start to feel the pressure, that's also when mistakes start to get made. If you're not experienced with sim racing, or even if you are, you know, you get that same level of nerves. You want to hold on to this 5th place, and you've now got immense pressure coming out. You start to double think to yourself. You wonder how that person's conserved their tires. You know, are they getting more out of the car than you? Is that guy braking later than me coming into that corner? How is he braking so late? You know, all of those things, if you start putting that into the driver in front of you's head, he's not focusing on the road in front, and that's time for you to make up. So a lot of pressure being put on by Jardier onto the back of Felix, and Felix now needs to really prove that cool, calm, and collected can be a thing.
Absolutely, and I did want to add real quick, as it was mentioned, for the drivers that decided to not pit, as it was not mandatory for this race to pit, some of them are not going to grab tires because that would have cost them too much time, but we're going to start seeing that in the last few laps here. Those tire miles are going to start breaking down, especially with these aggressive driving maneuvers that we've seen, or even just grabbing some curb, or even a sausage or two, as we caught on the stream earlier on. That's going to rip into your tires. They're cooking out in the South African heat, and we're going to start seeing the drivers start battling maybe their own cars at this point, where they have to just keep the car on the track, and now they have to add pressure from behind. This is going to get potentially pretty dicey for these late battles.
On that last lap, sorry Ryan, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, just on a quick note tonight, how clean has the racing been here tonight? The stewards have not had too much to do. Only four incidents tonight have resulted in stewarding decisions to get involved. One drive-through penalty, one 15-second post-race penalty, and one 5-second post-race penalty. So, yeah, driving standards have been very, very good tonight, which is always nice to see here. And we can only hope that the other splits have been the same. Of course, the Pro-Am and Am split being run tonight as well, but those, of course, unfortunately not being streamed, as we do not have the broadcasting staff available to do so right now. But go on, George.
Yeah, I was actually going to just ask you about those penalty reports, if we had updated that final one on the car number 44.
Car number...
The 5-second time penalty.
Yes, the 5-second time penalty for car number 44 was for pushing another car off track in the final corner. And they did get a warning for driving standards as well, so that's the reason that penalty was given.
Yeah, those 5-second penalties are currently being used for a avoidable contact, as it has been defined by the Stewart team. So it might have just been something a little bit losing a little bit of grip, catching some door a little harder than would be considered polite in these cars, and possibly losing a little bit of position. Nothing too serious to throw them off the course. But it's something worth noting, and as we have mentioned before, RCI, we try to hold up a very high standard for our drivers, and they usually match that or even succeed it in some aspects to keep the race clean and exciting for all of us. And so we'll continue to see those little time penalties. But as mentioned, we've seen Antilla in 8th place with the 15. Oh yes, going wide a little bit, and that's the thing that we've been talking about. Those little mistakes, and now Jardier is just on the back spoiler of Felix, coming into the last corner, going wide, going for the pass, holding onto it. But this is going to get really dicey coming down the main straight, as they are almost side by side. But I think Jardier was able to get some solid speed coming out of there, as we go back to the spoiler cam of Felix going into turn 1, going wide again. This is going to be a fast pass. Oh my god, he might actually just slip by. It's going to grab it, and they're going to go side by side through these turns, and Jardier is sliding past like he's not even moving. That was insane to watch.
That was really insane to watch, Jardier. We talked about that smooth battery effect, and just slips on by. Felix has no idea how he lost that position around the outside of Crowthorne, but we talked about it. Felix was holding on to 5th. He could feel the pressure heating up from Jardier's Porsche for the last couple of laps. It was brewing up. The big mistake being made down into the Crocodiles, forcing him wide, that allowed Jardier to get right onto the back spoiler, and from there it was all slipstream effect and benefits coming out. And now Felix not off it yet. He's still trying to chase down onto Jardier, but a couple of car lanes have elapsed between them just in the last couple of corners. So it's that mind game side. You've lost the position. You now have to suddenly focus again on where you're braking, where you're trying to find speed. And we'll go back to the deck, the number 10 on the back of Lawrence here. No, Lawrence has really had a lot of defending to do in this race, whether it's been Lebrec, I believe, early on as well. So, oh, wide, oh, scrappy, sideways, drifty. That is the way to describe what Lawrence just did to the top of Lucorp, and the deck will just breeze on by. And good work from Lawrence to hold on to a Porsche whose tires are most certainly starting to let go.
Absolutely, and we see Dedicek securing 9th position, and again, those little mistakes, grabbing a little bit too much back in and slipping up, is gonna cost you that position, especially when we're going into these last minute battles, going into the last 7 minutes now of the race here at Kyalami, as we got Cormac coming here. Is gonna rip inside, gets back in line for the slipstream, and I think that's what we're going to keep seeing, is these slipstream jumps are just going to be insane, as he's going to go again for the inside and secure the position, and that is going to be another slick little pass on the inside. That's what we've come to expect now, as we've seen it now 3 times happen in the last minute, just proving that this race is not over. Positions are going to keep changing all the way until 0, and that is making for some very exciting racing.
Yeah, Cormac Ryan Meenan putting a Jardier-esque move on display there. Not quite as impressive or as fast-paced as the likes of Jardier's overtake, but definitely taking some inspiration from there, it seems, as Louis Alexandre is starting to drop further back down the field. Now, in fact, it's Chris Hooker between those 2 cars at the moment. He is the 4th placed car. Looking at the top 5, don't think anything is going to change towards the last 6 minutes of the race. Jonas Savalainen is still your leader. He has led from start to finish, so doing very well indeed. Wolf Matushka, well, since Samir Ibrahimi and Jardier got involved in a slight incident, he has remained in 2nd place, and despite the fact he's 9 seconds behind Savalainen, he has done very well indeed, and it's 2.3 second gap to Samir Ibrahimi. Wolf hoping to hold on to this 2nd place, and Samir, he's running out of time to hunt down Matushka.
Yeah, only 5 minutes on the clock remain. If he wants to get it done, needs to get it done now, and it's not the gap that you would see. Running wide there as well, gonna cost himself a little bit of exit speed. Really wants to make his way back up into that 2nd place. No one's happy with 3rd. When you suddenly get a taste of podium, you suddenly just want another step on it. So Samir here trying to climb a rung, and Matushka going to, of course, not be letting up and trying to just hold off. But Savalainen really a treat, not really to the viewers today, because he hasn't really got to have much screen time running away with the pack and not having too many fights, but definitely impressive pace coming out from that number 77 Porsche in 1st place. The Cup car, not an easy car to drive around. I think leading a race like that and just keeping to build up, or keeping on adding to your gap, is just so difficult to do. Fighting is one thing, leading is another. But definitely I would like to tip the hat to the number 77, who hasn't really featured as much as all these other cars on the screen, but that doesn't take away from just the massive lead that he's amassed from the start.
Absolutely, and as we continue to follow Samir in the 49, looking for that 2nd place on the podium, up from 3rd from Wolf. Coming from what I've been watching on my screen, it's got to be just tantalizing that he's seen the back of Wolf at the beginning of the next turn, and that's been happening for the last at least 10 laps. Just to see it so close but so far away, as the skill of these drivers is really being shown. All those little tiny mistakes, every time that Samir grabs a little bit too much curb or just a little bit of dirt, loses that valuable time that maybe he was scrapping for from one lap to another. But yeah, continuing out his cockpit view, he continues to get little glimpses of Wolf in the distance, and is going to attempt to hold on to that as he goes loose a little bit again around that corner there. Just goes to show that we are ripping through these tires, and these last few minutes are gonna get scrappy, and mistakes could happen all the way up to the last second. And I mean, this is still a possibility. You know, anything could happen. We have at least 2 more laps, if not 3, judging by the pace. But yeah, you know, I mean, the position for second might still be up for grabs here.
I can just confirm there that we have 2 laps remaining as Savalainen comes around turn 2. This is going to be the penultimate lap of the race, so he only has to hold on for another few minutes as he's coming around to lap another car at the moment. Saying that's the number 15 car actually that he is coming up to the back of, and that is Saknes in 16th place. So to be honest, not lapping that many cars from the complete field. Of course, we have had a few people drop out of the race. Unfortunately, Ossi Takamaki, Alexander Doricott and Ismail Lebrec have unfortunately dropped out. Zahir Essa, who qualified very high up, I think he qualified in 5th towards the front end of the field, had an incident on the first lap. He's all the way down in 20th, but it's a decent comeback for him after he was 2 laps down after the first lap. So to come back to a top 20 after being all the way down in 26th, 27th I believe it was, is not too bad for the South African, and I'm sure that George will be happy to see that he has recovered some places towards the end of the race.
Well, he's definitely chuffed, you know, to see that he's come back, stuck it out, and climbed back through the order. Again, like I tipped my hat to the number 77, I will tip my hat to my prediction. I feel that without said incident, you know, things could have been a little bit different up the order, but that's racing at the end of the day, and that's what we come here for. Sometimes things like that happen, the driver gets dealt with from the stewards, and then we carry on with our racing. So final lap will go out. We will stay on board, I believe, with our number 77, Jonas Salvalainen, as Savalainen. Am I saying his name correct, Ryan? I mean, you are surname expert.
I would say Savalainen.
Savalainen, okay. I mean, I try and say it how you say it, and sometimes it doesn't even sound like that. So, to be honest, it's like at school when you're just learning things and it goes in one ear and out the other. Sometimes that happens with me too, but it doesn't matter. Through Clubhouse we go. On our final lap here at Kyalami. It's just gone 3:15 in the afternoon. Track temperature is a blistering 39 degrees, 30 degrees out in the sun for the spectators watching our number 77 make his way up to Leeuwkop for the final time. Back onto the brakes and back down the course. The change in elevation here is intense. I've walked up this hill myself. I'm not even lying to you. Makes his way down to the mine shaft. Such a fast, bumpy corner. Holding on for your dear life, trying to, putting trust in your tires and brake pads before going back through the crocodiles and making your way up to Leeuwkop, where the sausage curb has maybe claimed a couple of victims, but not this car, not the number 77. First place will be his. Ingwe is the final corner here on lap 34 of our round 1 at Racing Club International for our Porsche Cup, and crosses the line with a beautiful first place finish as Matushka, our second place car, will be flashing his lights to cross the line. The number 25 takes second. Samir Ibrahimi in the number 49 will take third. Chris Hooker in that beautifully colored, beautiful orange, blue and other blues will take fourth, and Jardier will take fifth, the number 39. Andre Felix, number 88, will lick his wounds as he lost out to fifth right at the end of it. But Makowski will finish in 7th place, with Antilla taking, it will be 8th for now, but will be adjusted for that 15 seconds perhaps, as Dedek now makes his way through Cheetah. Is he close enough to Antilla for that timing penalty to apply? Well, Lawrence will jump up into 9th, Garland will finish in 10th, and the deck will cross the line in 11th. So it doesn't look like Antilla's time penalty really costing him too much there. As yeah, I mean, great race coming out there, Ryan.
Yeah, it was. It was something to watch from start to finish, really, and that is something we have seen with the Porsche Cup in some of the past events that I have commentated on. Is that there's always something to watch out for, and it does always get a bit chaotic, but absolutely fantastic racing. And Savalainen here, just getting towards his parade lap at the end as the server finishes, and unfortunately we did just miss getting the full leaderboard up towards the end of the race, but the championship standings will be up, well, we'll have some championship standings for you come the next round in a week's time, I believe it is. Yes, it is, in a week's time, 22nd of June. We'll be back, and that will be at Laguna Seca for the second round of the Monday Porsche Cup. But before that, of course, on the 20th of June, Saturday, George, you will be joining me for that race, and that is going to be the Misano Ferrari versus Lamborghini event. 2-hour race at Misano. That is going to be incredibly entertaining, I think. And as far as I've seen, we've also got Jesse Lee joining us in the box for that one, so that's always going to be interesting. But apart from that, yeah, the Porsche Cup will be back next week at Laguna Seca, Nick's home circuit, so Nick will be joining us, and I think we will have Thomas Crabb in the box with us for Laguna Seca as well, but if not, it will be George Smith joining in again. So, George, closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts were that I'm glad Thomas couldn't make the race so that I could do the round at Kyalami. So, you know, if I don't get to do the next one, then I'm not sad that I missed out on a great race. So, shout out to you guys for allowing me to come through. I think it was a phenomenal run. I think Silverlinen really did just have too much of a run. He needs a little bit of Porsche BOP there, or everybody needs to upskill themselves a little bit, because really just seems to have a grasp of that car. But great racing across the pack, and you know there were a couple of incidents which weren't catastrophic, but you know at the same time there was just great racing across the board.
Yeah, for sure. And Nick, of course, you're going to be here with me next week for sure, barring anything that maybe gets in your way. But what's your closing thoughts for tonight before we sign off the stream?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as we said many times, you know, it was a scrappy race. It was, you know, door-to-door action the whole time, you know, all the way up until the last lap. We saw even a couple of positions move around a little bit. Of course, that was a screaming finish from our leader, but you know, I'm sure we'll continue to see that kind of tight competition go through the rest of this little mini series, as we've come to expect from these drivers. And these Porsche Cup cars are honestly just really fun to watch.
Yeah, they definitely are. So, yeah, as mentioned before, next week we will play host to the second round of this 3-round championships mini Porsche Cup series that we have going on at the moment. And I will be joined by Nick Setnick and Thomas Crabb, hopefully, but if not, George Smith will be back for another round. Anyway, thank you very much to the admins for organising the race tonight, despite some of the slight back-end issues we had. Thank you to all the live stewards today that managed to keep on top of all the incidents in and around the circuit. And thank you very much to everyone for joining us here tonight, whether you contributed to the chat or not. Have a great evening.
Feel it's hopeless when you think that you lost. Oh, I will take your hand and we'll rise up from the dust. Oh, here we go, 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 let us heal and grow. You won't be alone, we're unstoppable. Don't be afraid to show what we're going for. This is what we know. Here we come back to life, we're still breathing. Standing up, everybody's gonna see it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. Even if we fall, we will rise up and we follow the path that we believe in. No, we're not gonna stop until we reach it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. We rise up from the dust and clean my throat. never